This is Culture, Communication, and Brand Moments with Shelby Joe Long, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet, hear their stories, and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their success into your life and business. Culture, Communication, and Brand Moments is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Shelby Joe Long.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Shelby Joe Long here to introduce you to some entrepreneurs that have created a business out of their own genius and their own intuition. And it's exciting to be able to tell these stories because it's something that I've done myself, help people with communication and help people harness their genius to be able to create a business out of it. But I love to hear the stories about how that happens. And I want to inspire you in the audience to be able to think about your genius in a different way. How can I serve a community? How can I create a business out of it? How can I make an impact with people? And I'm very excited for the conversation that we're going to have today. Pooja and I met on LinkedIn, I believe, and we have quite a few mutual contacts. We are in the same space that we serve authors and we serve people that are trying to do some different things with their content. And it's just amazing to talk to some people that have similar businesses because we are stronger together. And when we hear those stories and understand that, we can refer business. That's what makes entrepreneurship just that much more fun. So, Pooja, welcome to the podcast. And I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. My name is Pooja Arshanapally. I'm the owner of the Content Repurposer, and I help authors take the content of their book and then put it into different mediums. So it's kind of just helping strategically taking the content of their book and figuring out what areas that they can use to monetize, other than just relying on book sales, but also creating, if someone is a nonfiction author and they're trying to spread a mission behind the book, how can we use that as a leverage to like create a bigger impact on the mission that you're trying to move forward with?
100%. I love all of that. Very much resonates with what I do. And so there's a lot of synergy with what we do. But tell me a little bit more about how you got into this. Are you an author yourself? How did you get into that community?
Yeah, it kind of just started by accident. So I had a very my career is kind of very random. I had a degree in UI UX design, so it's heavily focused on research, understanding like your user for like apps that are built. But it was heavily just like most of my major was just me researching and like interviewing people and like understanding who your audience is. I guess it pertains now when it comes to marketing, but I guess it's because it was just very specific for app making. But then when I got a job, it was actually in tech. So I worked in tech for 3 years, very systematic, very logic-based thinking. It was not for me.
Yeah.
And I just wanted something creative. So I was doing marketing on the side and I was just doing different side projects. So it was literally anything. But I think when I was working in social media, it was something that I stuck with for a long periods of time while I was working my full-time job. And therefore, I decided to transition into social media marketing. And then from there, it was very broad of what I wanted, like who I was focusing on. And I wanted to focus on something that I enjoyed. So I just started testing out, just working with authors for social media marketing. And then I realized there's a bigger need, and there's just selling the book it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard metric too. It's a long-term investment. And I found out other ways that they can just they don't have to rely solely on the book. Because I realized that a lot of the authors who I was working with, and this solely like nonfiction, is they have other streams of income, and they could easily use either plug in the book or plug in the ideas of the book and concepts of the book into the other streams and be able to spread the mission further.
Yeah. That's that's where our stuff, where you and I resonate and we share a lot of that similar vision, is because you write a book and it doesn't sell itself. And I mean, and also people, I think, are not hesitant to write a book, but authors in particular, you work so hard on the book,
Yeah.
and then you spend hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours on the book, and then you're not getting that return on investment right away. So thinking about what you can do with that content, and to think more of it, of how to build a business around it, whether you have a speaking opportunities that come from it, or whether you are involved with a cause or a nonprofit, like a bigger mission, and how you can be involved in the bigger space, I think is a way to think about another way to think about your book and what you can do with it. So I think that's great. Also, another thing kind of sticks out for me too, because from your just short story, you worked in tech, very logical, your space, what you're trained in, and then you found out that wasn't something that resonated with you as much as you wanted it to. And so you gravitated towards something that fed your soul a little bit more. And I think I want to talk about that step, because I think for many genius entrepreneurs out there, there's a fear of stepping away from something stable. I dealt with this myself in academia. It's like, I don't want to separate from academia completely because that's stable and I know I have that job. But to be able to separate from that and go fully into what your passion is, can you talk about that process and what inspired you to do that, first of all, and then kind of the steps on how you did do that?
Yeah. So I think like even like back in college, I think I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. But I think at that time I just didn't know what to do.
Right.
So it just made sense to just have a 9 to 5 job. And I think for like tech, I think so the last job that I had in tech was actually really good. Like it was a really good environment, which kind of bummed me out because I didn't really like the work.
Yeah.
Because I really liked the people. It was just a lot of work. And I think at the time I was working full time. It was a pandemic. So all you were doing was work.
Yeah.
You didn't really have much social interaction. And then on the side, I was doing a part-time job. So I was probably working like 60 to 80 hours a week. And so yeah, so I think time, like I was like, it's getting time where I'm like, I'm getting burnt out. I have to make a decision because if I want to grow this business, I can't have like I need more time. I need more hours. Um, and then another part is I think it was just like I just want to like leave. Like I think like in general, I just wanted to get out of that tech job. I just needed a reason. It's like
Yeah.
you know the answer, you just don't want to confront it.
Love that. Yeah.
And so it's like I think it was like, okay, this is my reason. I just need to get out because I think even if I didn't choose this career, I think I would have changed, like I would have switched to careers regardless. And so this was just my transition of like I just need to move out. And then I think for me, like, I also didn't have many consequences as well. If like the worst case scenario for me was I just move in back with my parents.
Yeah.
So there wasn't much risk for me to like quit my job. And I also like because I was thinking about it, I didn't just the minute I was like, I need to transition out, it was probably like 2 years when I thought about it. It wasn't like a 30-day notice type of thing, or
Right.
I thought about it for 2 years, which meant like this is something I'm committed to. It's not a temporary like emotion of like, oh, like one thing happened at work where you're like, oh my God, if I had a business, no, it's a long-term investment.
Yeah.
So I knew that I was committed. It was enough for me to know that this is the right decision for me.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to talk about too. It's like, yes, you can jump off the cliff, and I've known people that have done that successfully. But if you're thinking about it and it can be part of your plan, I think that's a way to think about it too, where your side hustle then turns into your business and you're able to cut those ties. So those are some important things to think about. But also, like, you're young, and so there wasn't a lot of consequences to that. And I wonder, and maybe this is a generational thing. I don't know if that, like in my generation, where it was like, you get your job, you work your job until you retire, and then there's post retirement. But I feel like a lot of people that are my age, which is like getting into your second career almost before the retirement age happens, because there's time. And I wonder if the pandemic kind of sped up that mentality. And I wonder if like the millennial generation and the Gen X generation, if they have that mentality more, that my time needs to be quality. And it's much more about quality of life rather than it is the security, So I just kind of wonder, it just talks on about all those bigger reasons out there to have that conversation. So
Yeah, I think when you said that, it kind of reminded me. So I think the reason why I picked UI UX design as a career, because I actually was in a creative field where UI UX design was it was like a smaller concentration. My actual major was interactive media. So like other people were like in animation and game design. So it was actually very creative. But
very
I
creative.
picked the most practical one because I wanted to like be able to travel anywhere. I was like, this job is demanded like any type of city, anywhere. And I just wanted to like, I think I just wanted to travel or like be able to like work remote.
100%. Yeah. Which is also something that's really attractive. But you also created something where you can do that too.
Yeah.
So do you feel so getting a little bit more into what you do, talk a little bit more about your content repurposing. Like, do you take things in the book and is it a marketing approach that you have, or do you develop other content like blogs or podcasts? Kind of talk about what it is exactly, how you repurpose and how you inspire that.
Yeah, so I have two different offers. So one is it's more of the strategy of like, okay, you give me a book and I just tell you like a marketing strategy of how to utilize your book, whether you have like an email newsletter, you have a blog article going and you just want someone to be like, this is what you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Or let's create a stream of income based on your goals of like, what do you want this to happen? So usually that's one way. Another option is if you wanted, like, for example, you wanted to produce it to a podcast, like produce a couple of episodes based on this book or so on, I would like first help you with the strategy as before, and then help refer you to someone or work with someone who is able to produce a podcast for you.
Yeah. That's why we're going to get along, because we do all that stuff. Yeah. It's just, it's interesting. And you work with all nonfiction authors, correct?
I would say like majority of what I do is nonfiction. I have worked with fiction authors. It's just a completely different field.
Yeah.
It's more of like social media marketing or content repurposing, which is still what I do. It's just a little bit different compared to nonfiction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, marketing principles are similar for everything. One thing that I feel that in my work with authors that have written books and also that have podcasts and that are building a business around their ideas, basically around their genius, is that we don't think about all the possibilities, like the possibilities of an online program or the possibilities of being a consultant or a keynote speaker. And in the nonfiction space, I think that's so important because I feel that in the conversations that I've had with some authors, we think about the book and I'm going to sell the book. We don't really think about all of the other ways that we could use those ideas to impact our audience. And so that's something I think that is really incredible, and it's something good to inspire. And if you can inspire that and then have vehicles and avenues for places to do that, then that's something that can be really incredible for authors. I find too, because I work with primarily nonfiction authors, but I find too that even thinking, with fiction authors, what is so important with fiction authors, and this is important for nonfiction authors too, is your brand and who you are and who you speak to and who's your target audience. Because you really have to think about who your target audience is, because not everybody's going to buy your book, or not everybody's going to listen to your podcast. But if you find that community that really resonates with your message, then that's the opportunity for income. So I find that with nonfiction and fiction authors, but I think in particular, the brand is so important, because you've got to put your audience in mind too. So
Yeah, I actually, it kind of reminded me of like someone I worked with before. She was a children's book coach, and she had a couple of children's books that she created herself, and she was relying on Amazon. It was more marketed through Amazon, but I was like, but why not market it to your children's book, like your clients, and then use it as an example or reference, and then take content from the book and like use the principles that you're already teaching them, and then use the reference in your book. So then they can then go and buy the book and then use that as a reference to create their own children's book.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no, to build your own following, to have that in a larger genre conversation. And I just find that to be so interesting too. And I also find, with entrepreneurs too, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, that a book is the second thought, because a book is also a way to build your expertise and your credibility, right, and to establish you as an authority in the field. And that they don't think about, yes, having a book is great, but then you can use that book to do so many different things and connect you to so many different places. And I find too with entrepreneurs that, and I wonder if the same is true with authors, like particularly nonfiction authors, if it's a space where people are like scared about their competition. If you're in a similar genre as another person, is there competition in that genre? And I mean, with business, that's exactly what it is. But I wonder if there's the same feeling in there. Like, I have this great idea and I need to be unique, and so people will understand it. But I feel that being affiliated with your competition is the biggest benefit, because then you learn more about the community. So I kind of wonder if that's the same in the nonfiction author space.
I think it depends on the industry. So like I think for like coaching, that it probably is, because how do you stand out? If you offer something similar, it's more of your brand itself, like the people, you as a person or a personality. So I think, and then also like for public speaking events, so if they do public speaking engagements, I think having a book can increase their fee a lot more.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Do you work with people that already have books published, and then you develop the strategy? Yeah.
Yeah, I primarily work with authors who have already published the book, but I'm not opposed, because like it doesn't have to be specifically a book. I know that there's people who have like ebooks, or they have like loads of content, and they just haven't written the book, but the book is already there with all the material that they have. They just need someone to go through it and just like pick what they should be putting it into.
Right. The content repurposer. You are the person to figure all of that out. Well, where can our audience find you if they are curious about your services?
Yeah, so you can go to my website. It's called thecontentrepurposer.com. And I also, at the very end of the website, I have a freebie, and it's just a freebie of 3 ways to repurpose your book into social media content. And it's just like a freebie to my newsletter.
Yeah, nice. And then your website, and then can we find you on LinkedIn? I'll be sure to include that in the show notes. And anywhere else?
I would say like on Instagram, and I do have a podcast on Spotify. It's all labeled the Content Repurposer.
Okay.
So if you just search that, it should be one of the first ones.
It's a unique name. Well, great. My final question for people that have created a business out of their expertise is always, what would you say to the person out there that's thinking about starting their own business, but is reluctant to take that next step? What would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
I think I think a lot of people think that there's risk in failing, but I think there's also risk in not taking those opportunities. So there's more risk in saying what ifs, even though you don't see the consequences of that.
Sure. So do it. And there are many people out there to help you do that and to figure out how to make more money for your ideas. There are strategists like Pooja that can help you, and like me that can help you. So reach out, and we are a community of people to help small businesses grow and succeed and be with other businesses. That's where we make the bigger impact. So I just thrilled to have this conversation with you today, to be able to tell the audience all these opportunities.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
And I'm going to look forward to looking at your podcast too, since our ideas are so aligned. So yeah, anything else, anywhere else that the audience can find you online? Do you have any events coming up?
Not right now. Eventually I will, but I don't have anything at the moment.
Yeah. But be on the lookout, because you will, because you know about content repurposing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and telling us about your expertise. I look forward to working with you. There's a ton of referral possibilities between both of us, going both ways. So I'm really excited to continue that conversation. And to all of you genius entrepreneurs out there, don't be afraid to ask, what if I don't do this? You have an idea, you can impact the audience, and you can make that change. You just have to take that first step. Feel free to reach out if you ever need any other advice, or you want to hear another story about how to become a genius entrepreneur. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Culture, Communication, and Brand Moments with your host, Shelby Jo Long. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next